Today's episode, I know what you're thinking. Yes, prostitutes! And sadly, that is not the case. Instead of prostitutes, all we have are Amazons. And normally I would be really excited about a story about Amazons because, hello, ass-kicking lady warriors seem to be exactly what Xena's about. But it's kind of weird to call them harlots in the episode title because one, misleading, and two, kind of awful and misogynistic. Luckily, there is an explanation for it, kind of, even if it still doesn't really make it right. The first thing I actually want to talk about is the issue of Gabrielle's costume. Now, as you recall, up till now, we've seen her pretty much looking the same. Drab. And it's just weird because she hangs out with Xena all the time, who's basically half naked. And yes, it's obviously supposed to be making a point about the relative naivete, I hate people who pronounce it naivete, of Gabrielle versus worldly, sexy Xena. But basically, all you need to know is this is a key episode for Gabrielle's costume. I don't know why that makes me so excited, but it does. So the episode starts with Xena and Gabrielle just kind of walking through the forest, when suddenly they're set upon by Amazons. And strangely and ahistorically, Amazons with two boobs. In a show about boobs, as much as this is a show about boobs, yes, these little nitpicky details matter, because they're boob-related. But if you think the Amazons look weird, the centaurs are truly special, because the centaurs pretty much all look like escapees from an 80s hairband. They're all wearing these stupid little, like, headband, and they all have this crazy curly hair that goes it's really unattractive and really fake. But the other funny thing about the centaurs is that you have to do a lot of maneuvering with the centaurs. So what you end up having to do is you waste a lot of money on 10 seconds of really bad CGI footage of like whole centaur. So for the rest of the episode, you have to maneuver your centaur actors behind really convenient chest-high furniture and hide them from the chest down. They also really like close-ups, except that the close-up ends up being like 90% hair and 10% little bitty face right in the middle. It's a sad thing to watch. Okay, plot. Maybe you want to hear about the plot. The plot is basically Xena and Gabrielle wander into Amazon territory and meet up with this Amazon princess and her little Amazon friends. Oh no! One of the Amazon friends gets like attacked, and they think the centaurs did it because the little feathers on the end of the arrow that like is sticking out of her chest by the end of the scene is blue. And all of the Amazons use like green arrows, and this one's blue, so clearly it's a centaur. In her last dramatic dying moments, this Amazon, who Gabrielle attempted to save the life of, gives her her rite of caste, and they all get taken back to the Amazon camp. Now the thing about the Amazon camp is that Amazon culture apparently revolves around 2 or 3 basic tenets. The first tenet is wear very little clothing, but apparently get really good support bras. And 2, dance. There's so much dancing in this camp, I don't know where they find the time to do any actual arms training, or arms upkeep, or really anything to do with responsibilities, because every single extra in the Amazon camp is either playing on a drum or dancing. Eventually we find out what rite of caste means. Basically, Gabrielle gets to take over being the Amazon princess who's dead. This is either a really quick and easy way to figure out succession problems or kind of a terrible idea. As well we know, Gabrielle can't fight. I don't know why you would make her an Amazon. Is it because she's pure of heart? That doesn't exactly seem to be an Amazonian priority, is all I'm saying. Anyway, Gabrielle gets taken aside by this one Amazon chick to figure out how to become an Amazon. Priority number 1 is dress her up like a sexy Amazon. And this is going to be kind of the basis for her costume for the rest of the season, essentially. It is important to note, however, that she does start training with a fighting staff. And so eventually, she's no longer going to have to be kind of standing in the corner anymore with a pitchfork going, yeah, as everyone else does the fighting. She'll get to join in. Good for Gabrielle! A around about this time, Xena also decides to do some sleuthing. And for Xena, sleuthing apparently just means walking straight into the Centaur camp. She's really talented. Xena being Xena, she gets into a fight, and then we see some fantastic Xena medicine techniques. In this case, after the little fight, we have a Centaur who's all like, I can't breathe. And so Xena gets to fix him. This involves Xena walking over to the Centaur, going, poke, poke. The Centaur says, ugh, I can't feel my chest. And Xena says, good, that's the point. Then she borrows a dagger from a convenient person and plunges it, off camera, into his side, rips him open, and then plunges her hand in and starts feeling around. Yeah. She tells everyone that his rib is pressing into his lung, so she deftly yanks it out of the way and then asks for needle and thread as she pulls her red and bloody hand out of his side. And apparently that was how you did medicine in ancient Greece. But there is a warlord who has the most amazing beard, because it's not a beard, I swear to God. He has a little painted thing, like right here in his chin. And at one point it kind of looked like it was being a little curly-Q beard. And then I think it was just like a painted-on triangle with a funny thing in the middle. But my God, it was not facial hair, and it was sick and wrong. It's obvious to the viewer that this is the one who's manipulating everything, just to be sure. And for the benefit of the not very bright viewers back home, Xena does some more sleuthing that night and ends up teaming up eventually with this curly-haired Amazon chick. They figure out that it couldn't have been a centaur based on manure. Yeah. The plot of this episode hinges on horse poop. Awesome! At this point, you might wonder what Gabrielle has been doing all this time while Xena has been sleuthing. Basically, it kind of boils down to what Amazons do. Number 1, wearing not a lot of clothing. Number 2, dancing. And number 3, she's been learning to fight with an Amazon stick. Whatever, the first 2 were clearly priorities. We then cut to a scene with the warlord, which just confirms everything we know about him already. It's pretty standard evil villain stuff, but it's amazing because the scene ends with him being like, ha 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 ha, and it's that long and awkward. Now, the Amazon Queen is hell-bent on killing off this centaur. Now, it's pretty obvious that he didn't do it, but she won't hear reason because she has to avenge the death of her sister. So Xena maneuvers Gabrielle into challenging the Queen, which is in fact a challenge to the death, which means that Gabrielle has to name Xena her champion, and it's all basically a giant excuse to have some girl fighting. And there's lots of jumping up and down and flips in the air, and it's your basic, typical Xena fight. And how do we know it's your basic, typical Xena fight scene? Because we have Gabrielle standing off to the side, holding some weapons, and giving the occasional reaction shot, where she kind of jiggles them and is like, hit her, Xena! Yeah, get her! Ugh! This poor girl. Xena wins because, let's face it, Xena always wins. This is her show. Her name is in the title. And when the centaurs show up, she instantly surrenders and gives a very moving 10-second speech about how they're not enemies because they're friends. It's very touching. So the centaurs and the Amazons combine their forces and run off to challenge the warlord, and plot happens, and they win, and everyone's really excited. Basically, this episode is nowhere near as good as Prometheus. No episode can be as good as Prometheus. The weird thing about this episode is they never actually have the scene that you expect there to be, where Gabrielle decides to leave the life of the Amazon and travel with Xena. I mean, we all know that she would stick with Xena. There wouldn't really be a question about it. But they don't actually show it. And come on, Xena writers, you've never met a cliche or a plot anvil that you didn't want to embrace. Why deny us? But at least this episode did move us forward into important costuming and, like, character development ways. So I guess it's got that going for it. Even if there were no prostitutes.